I'd like to introduce you today to Stella Shinder and her son Alex, who are going to be talking about Stella's life, which is varied and very interesting, starting off in Chemnitz, and ending in not hopefully not ending, but in London. And it's lovely to see her on Mother's Day. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Gillian. Thanks for everyone for attending. We're going to just get Stella talking about her life in Nazi pre-war Germany, and then her trip to the UK and her early life as an evacuee in the UK. What is particularly interesting, I think, is first of all, it's wonderful to have Stella, who had firsthand experience of the events in the 30s, talking to us, which is such an important event for our history. And secondly, I think it's interesting to see that along with other people who survived this period, there was a series of opportunities and forces at work in a particular sequence that essentially moved Stella from where she was in Chemnitz to where she was in London. And I imagine a very similar sort of story applies in many ways to other people, but with different signals, different opportunities. So I think we can start, Stella, if you're ready. Can you unmute yourself?
Are we good?
All right, Stella, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, okay. So if we could start with your you take us from the beginning, your childhood in Chemnitz. Tell us a bit about Chemnitz and how how it was for you as a young child.
Well, I remember everything from three years onwards, and I remember walking with my nanny in the street, and there were riots, Nazis and communists fighting in the street while we were taking our walk. So that was one of my earliest memories of Chemnitz, and my father had a fight with somebody from a block of flats. Can you hear me?
Mum, I think you're jumping ahead a little, because I think you're talking about these fights taking place when you were about 3 years old, which would have been in about 1931, which is before Hitler came to power. So Hitler came to power in 1933. So when
but the communists and now they were already fighting in the street before he became chancellor. So they were already the Nazis and the communists were already fighting in the streets before things settled. Yes.
Right. Good. Okay. And how you saw that, and what was Chemnitz like as a place?
It was just a city like Birmingham, Manchester, something like, a lot of industry, but nothing particularly. Oh, it was surrounded by beautiful forests and lakes, but the city itself was nothing special. Oh, can you see the photograph of when you start school at 6? You get one of these big presents filled with sweets and chocolates to help you on your way. And this every child gets this, but when they start school, and that's the photograph. Yeah.
Well done. Well done for getting that photo on. You started experiencing anti-Semitism when you went to school.
Well, there was an incident. I had a little umbrella with red stripes on the handle, and one of the little girls said to me, is that the blood of babies that the Jews were killing. So, you know, this was my first sort of encounter with anti-Semitism.
And did you experience anything else while you were there until you were about 10? So,
well, we
4
were
years.
not allowed. We were not allowed to sit on benches in the parks. We were not allowed to use swimming pools, and so that started quite early on. And if we were in the street, we would be spat at by other children if they knew that we were Jews. So that was just almost normal life for us. And then later on, in the 1936, my brother got expelled from his gymnasium school because he was Jewish, and then he had to leave Chemnitz and go to Leipzig, where there was a Jewish school. Can you see this photograph? It's me on the right in the sailor dress, and the girl next to me was my best friend, and whom I later met by chance in London.
Okay, let's not jump ahead.
Yes, this was my last birthday party. I was 10 years old, and since my parents gave me this party, that was on the 3rd of July, which was a week before we left Germany. So
before we move on to the journey of leaving Germany, can we just hear a little bit about what your father did for a living and your mother? And
my father, my father was a textile merchant, and he actually exported mostly stockings. He actually had clients in England at the time as well, and he was quite successful, and my mother helped him in the business. They actually, the people that they did business with, the German manufacturers, they were on very good terms, and one of them even said to my parents, if I were you, I would leave the country. So, you know, they were well disposed towards us.
And your parents were about in their 30s, I guess, at this time.
Sorry,
Parents,
about 37,
yeah.
1937, yeah.
There was an incident, wasn't there, when your father got into a fight a bit
Yes,
earlier than this?
with the janitor of that was even earlier. That would have been about 1932. The janitor called my father a dirty Jew, and the janitor actually had a stick in his hand. My father pulled the stick from his hand and gave him a good beating. And of course, this was, they knew later on that this man would never forgive my father, and my father would have been in great danger later on because of this incident. So that was one of the things that happened. But
so no matter how hard you tried to keep your nose clean, which of course everyone was trying to do, it was impossible to do it completely.
That's right. Yeah, no, that was always, would hang over him always. And then of course I was also thrown out of school, and there was a Jewish lady who used to teach us privately in her own flat. My brother was already living in Leipzig, attending a Jewish school in Leipzig. He was billeted with a Jewish family. And then I jumped to July the 13th, Friday the 13th. Oh yes, my mother, prior to that, my mother was packing cases to go on holiday to Czechoslovakia, which was somewhere we used to go regularly. And I saw her packing some winter stockings And I said, Mummy, we are going, this is summer, why are you packing winter stockings? So I got a slap around my face to shut me up, because there was a cleaning lady in our home at the time, and my mother didn't want her to hear what I was saying, but I had no idea why I got the smack. I later on, of course, realized why I got the smack, because my mother was already packing, never to return.
So can you talk us through the journey then?
Sorry?
Walk us through your journey to
Oh, yes.
going on holiday.
We, my mother, we just, with our luggage, across the border from Germany into Czechoslovakia, which was then the Sudetenland, which was it was not quite Czechoslovakia, but already a German-speaking area of Czechoslovakia. And as we crossed the border, my mother told my brother and myself, we are never going back. And my brother and I were absolutely elated. We were delighted, because we realized that this was a good thing. So we stayed in Carlsbad, or Karlovy Vary, which was this beautiful spa, for a while. My father was still in Germany, and I don't know how they communicated. It must have been by letter, because there were no phones at the time. My father did not want to leave everything behind and join us. And my mother said to him, if you don't come and join us, you will never see us again. So my father packed his case, and he packed some cash in a briefcase, and decided, and he left everything behind, came to the station to take the train to Czechoslovakia, and he was so nervous that he actually left his briefcase containing money on the platform, which was lost forever. Anyway, he managed to get out and join us, and then we traveled to Prague, and hired a small flat in Prague. And my brother and I attended the German-speaking school in Prague, and we were spat at by the Czech children who thought we were Germans. So that was also not very pleasant. My mother then, she communicated with friends in Chemnitz and said, get out, but nobody paid any attention except our doctor, who actually came to join us in Prague, and he and my brother slept on the floor in the kitchen. We just had one large room with a kitchen and a bathroom, and my parents and I slept in the living room, and my brother and the doctor slept on the floor in the kitchen. So that was our stay in Prague.
Sorry to interrupt, but we've got quite a lot to get through, so I'm gonna cut you off occasionally.
Right.
There was a very important letter that, or presumably letter rather than phone call, that you received from your grandfather in Poland.
My grandfather, living in Warsaw, wrote to us and said there is his sister, who a great aunt who lived in London. Get her a visitor's visa to get out of Czechoslovakia, and we were very lucky, because she managed to get us visitor's visa, and we managed to actually leave Prague on the 6th of December 1938, and Hitler marched into Prague 3 months after that, or he marched. So we managed to escape, but the way we had to escape was to take an aeroplane because to take a train, we would have to cross Germany, which was too dangerous. So my parents just had enough money to hire a plane, which took us, the plane landed from Prague to Brussels, and then another plane from Brussels to Croydon in London. And that was on the 6th of December, 1938.
And then I think the next bit is we've kind of covered the journey, and I think maybe we should move then to your life as an evacuee in London now. Can we hear what happened once you got to Croydon Airport, which was the main London airport?
Yes, well, we stayed with this great aunt in her house in Hackney for a few weeks until my parents were able to hire a small flat in East London, so where we moved to at that stage. And my brother and I then attended the very religious Jewish school, which was in Stamford Hill at the time. And then when war broke out, we were evacuated with this Jewish school to a place called Sheffield in Suffolk. I think it was Suffolk at the time. And we were then evacuees. So I had to change several times. There were, it was my first billet was with a lady who was very kind but had no sheets. She had knitted blankets, and I had eczema, and so that didn't do my eczema any good. My mother managed to visit and get me out into another billet. The second billet was also a very kind lady who didn't realize that young children got hungry, so she never gave us enough food. So we used to go into the fields and eat raw beans and get tummy upset. And the Jewish, they sent kosher meals to Sheffield, and the kosher meals were not particularly fresh at the time, and we would get a lot of tummy upsets. So that was anyway. I had another billet, a third billet, where a very nice lady with two daughters, and the two daughters and I had to sleep in one double bed at the time, but they were very kind people. By that time, my brother and I we were in different billets. We were not in touch with each other. And I believe my brother made his own way back to London, but I didn't know that. And then I decided I had enough, and I put myself on a green line bus back to London without permission.
Or knowing where your parents lived.
Sorry?
Or knowing where your parents lived.
My parents had moved, but I did know where our other relatives lived. So I managed to, I don't know how it was. I had no money. Everybody was very kind. I remember being sick on the bus and crying, and then getting to King's Cross, and some kind porter put me on the right bus to Clapton, where I knew these relatives lived. I managed to get to the house and I was sitting there she gave me something to eat, and my father walked in. Surprise, surprise, saw me sitting there. Anyway, so that was a nice coincidence. And after that, they got me a place in a convent school. And the nuns were very, very, very kind. They took in Jewish children because it was wartime. It was so they, but they were it was a wonderful school, and that was the best school I had ever been to. So this happened, and then there was one incident on Rosh Hashanah my mother and I were dressed in our best clothes, and I had white gloves on, and a German plane flew over us trying to machine gun us. So my mother and I laid down flat, which, you know, we knew we had to lie down. We lay down flat in somebody's front garden and got our white gloves covered in mud, but we were safe. And then, of course, the Blitz started in earnest, and we had to sleep in the air raid shelters or in the underground. And unfortunately, my brother got pneumonia twice, and the doctor said, "Look," to my mother, get your children and you get out of London, because if he gets pneumonia a third time, it could kill him." So my mother, brother, and I left London, leaving my father behind. And we were then evacuated to various villages, again, different schools. And one of the villages, I don't remember the name, but we were billeted with a aristocratic family who were so kind to us. In fact, they kept in touch with us even after the war. And but my father was not allowed to visit because he was an alien and was not allowed to visit that particular. It was a constricted area, something to do with the aerodrome, with where the Air Force was positioned. But anyway, he was not allowed to visit. So the next step was that Chivas, the people who owned farms in Suffolk, they employed Jewish refugees to work on their farms because their own people had to join the army. So they had all these vacancies for the Jewish refugees. And my father was then able to come and join us in Sedgeford near Lakenheath, which was the village where the farms were. And then my mother was given the job of looking after these young Jewish refugees who had been brought back from internment camps. And she cooked for them and looked after them. And they all worked on the land, including my father. And I attended the village school. With the village mistress, again, a lovely teacher who had, in one room, she had to teach children from 6 to 14, all in one room. That was her job. That was her job as the teacher. And she encouraged me to take what they call in those days, it's the equivalent to an 11+ exam. And I managed to pass this exam, which enabled me to go to a secondary school. But the secondary school was an evacuated school in Ely in Cambridgeshire, and I then had to commute to school. I used to cycle to the train and take a train to school every day to attend the school in Ely. And one of the mistresses in this school, she was the maths mistress, and of course I had missed out on all math. Apart from arithmetic, I knew nothing of algebra or geometry, and she then made the remark that I was mentally retarded. Which I did not take seriously because I was top in history and English, and so anyway, those were my school days. I used to when I used to travel to school every day, and there were these lovely young American soldiers from Texas who taught me how to how to put my school hat in Texas style, which of course I got into trouble with the headmistress when I, wearing my hat, my school Texas style instead of the way I was supposed to wear it. Anyway, I attended that school until I was 15 years old, traveling every day to, from my home in Sedgefen. Yeah.
Can we jump forward a little bit then to possibly, can we see the picture of Stella at 18? Is that possible to flick up on the chat, share?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
It's all right, Mum, don't worry. It's not that one. Let's see if no, it's not working, is it? The picture of Stella at 18 years old, any chance? Let me see if I can share it, but I don't think I can. No, I not a chance.
Dad, it slowed up for 1 second, and also when Stella said she couldn't hear you, you did actually cut out for a moment.
Okay.
Repeat what you said.
Sorry, I'm just trying to see whether we can get a picture of Stella up at the age of 18, whether there's Lawrence, whether you have the chance to do that. Can you do that? There you go. That's it. That was it.
Oh, this was, no, I was by that time, this was when I already lived in Cambridge in the refugee hostel, where I was very, very happy with all the other young refugees aged from 15 to 23, boys and girls. And I was very, very happy there, apart from we were not getting enough food because the cook, who was a refugee lady who had never cooked in her life, she used to mess up the food. We'd find odd things like knives and forks, which she had dropped into the food, and so we were happy but hungry all the time. And I had a very good friend who left the hostel, and she used to feed me with peanut butter, bread and peanut butter sandwiches. And I attended lessons to learn shorthand writing and or office work, which I did not enjoy. And after my school, I would attend. I would work in the photographer's studio. She took this photo of me at the time. I was like a junior making tea and doing all little odd jobs to earn a little money. So this was from 4 to 6 every day, and this was my ability to go and visit my parents every fortnight, who were still in Sedgefen and Lakenheath. So I had enough money to take me to for the journey every fortnight, and that was I stayed there until the end of the war, when we came back to London.
Did your mother make contact with the people, any people from Chemnitz after the war?
No, we had no contact. We don't know what happened to our friends in Chemnitz. We never heard from them or saw them again. The only person that I saw was this girl who'd been at my friend who'd been at my birthday party. I was walking in the street, and suddenly there was this girl whose face had not changed, and we saw each other again and continued our friendship until she, many years later, she went to America to marry somebody in America. Unfortunately, she died of lung cancer at a very early age. But apart from that, we had no no contact with anybody from our early life.
And after the war, then you were saying what happened then?
Um, well, I came back to London, and I lived with my parents in Willesden Green. My father was then able to do a little bit of business with which was helped by these people that he had been in contact with even when from Germany. So they helped him to set up a little textile business that he would supply the shops with. He was like a what they call it, en gros. I can't remember the English name for that, but you know, he was in business. And my mother, she would bake cakes which she sold to a restaurant in Willesden, because she did some beautiful cakes, so she earned money. And my brother by that time had moved out. He lived with some friends, and the spare bedroom we let out to young, you know, to lodgers to
I
earn
think
a little
we'll
money.
move forward a little bit to just actually move back briefly. We need to wind up really soon, because I think there's some people who want to ask questions. But your brother, after the war, your brother was in the army at the end of the war.
He joined the army when he was old enough. Yes, and he then he had to change his name from Orbach because it was a German name. He then changed his name to Bill Morton instead of Wilhelm Orbach.
And he became an interpreter, I believe, in Germany.
He was an interpreter in the army here in Germany. Yes.
After the war, I guess.
Yes, he was made sergeant major.
And then moving forward a little bit, you were 20 or 19 and you met your life partner.
Yes, I went for a dance at the Czech club in Knightsbridge. I took a second cousin with me, and I happened to. That's where I met my future husband. In fact, he asked me to dance, and he then actually asked if he could take me home that night. And he was the only person among his friends who were all there, and he had a little Ford car, and he actually took my cousin and myself home. And when I got back, sorry, can you hear me? When I got back to my parents were already in bed, and I said to them, I think I've met the man I'm going to marry. So that was the man that I just met.
So can we see a few more photos now, Lawrence, if that's at all possible? You're doing really well with
We're trying.
So should we try partying?
Sorry?
There you go. That was it.
Oh, this was already after we were married. Yeah.
Okay. And then Venice in 1953.
Sorry?
It's all right, Mum. I'm just getting some photos I selected from your album. Just to give
it takes a while to get them up. Patience, please.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
No, I had this job in London with a frame maker, an artist frame maker who used to. We had all these marvelous paintings that he made frames for, and I worked for these people until I got married.
Okay. Well, while we're, I think we more or less sort of a natural end of a chapter, and probably should finish there. I just wanted to indicate that a couple of things I take aways, and then we'll throw it open to questions if we may. The first thing is, if you look at the sequence of events, like the opportunities that presented themselves as Germany, they in her, you know, in her particular instance, they were unique to her and her family, which were that, you know, things were hotting up. It was probably a good place to be, Germany, before the war, in the sense that people knew what was coming, and you know, they were experiencing Nazis firsthand. And Stella's family went on a regular holiday to the Sudetenland, which just in October fell to the Nazis, and then to London on a visitor's visa, and you know, which is probably something that the Brits would probably have thrown them out had it not been for the onset of war. And of course, these and other events effectively shaped where Stella got to in her journey. So that was one observation that seemed to me to be quite interesting. And I'm sure a lot of people who escaped, you know, had similar sort of chains of events that conditioned where they ended up. And whether this was luck or judgment, this was an interesting point of view. I think we've come to the conclusion that it was almost certainly luck. And the second thing was that as a child, experiencing anti-Semitism, people spitting at you and jeering at you, you know, this was what you saw as normal behavior. You know, so these dignities. I suppose it's logical that you would have thought it was perfectly normal. Why wouldn't you have done? You know, being on the receiving end of that young child, I'm sure your parents would have looked at it very differently, having, you know, been treated with dignity. So just a couple of thoughts. And just to finish off, Stella, this is a question, a low ball. You know, do you think this could happen again? Do you, you know, in your judgment, do you think that, you know, the events of the 1930s could be repeated?
Do I think what? Sorry.
Do you think that, you know, the rise of fascism in this way and the genocide to the Jews, do you think that could happen again?
Yes, unfortunately, there is now a growing anti-Semitism in almost every country, and it is very, very worrying. This is it's everywhere. There is the Nazis, you know, rearing up, as it were, and it is a big worry for Jews.
Well, thank you very much, Stella. That was a really edifying and interesting account. And I think we can throw it open to questions. Gillian, do you want to be the question master? Does that work?
Sorry.
You're on mute, Gillian. Sorry. Gillian, you're muted. I think I better be question master. Would anyone like to raise their hand and ask a question?
Yeah, it was, thank you, Stella, very much for a very interesting talk. So your record is fantastic. I don't know how you can remember from so long ago. It's brilliant. What didn't come across, well, from the photos it did, but I'm not sure how many came up. What a wonderful marriage you had.
Yes, yes. I'm again very lucky, and a wonderful marriage, and two wonderful sons and 7 marvelous grandchildren. I would say that all the time that I had a guardian angel looking after me. Yeah.
Could I ask you a question? I actually asked it right on chats, but my father was evacuated with the children from Rabbi Dr. Schoenfeld's to Shefford. And I wondered whether you, I mean, he was a boy, you were a girl. I know you were separated quite strictly, but would you have known him? His name was Kurt Shapira.
No.
No.
No. No. No.
He was the same age as you.
Yes.
And I just thought you might have come across him. He was brought over with Rabbi Dr. Schoenfeld.
Yes, yes.
From Vienna, yes. But thank you for your talk. It was so interesting. Because presumably, I don't know if you're a member of AJR, Association of Jewish Refugees.
I haven't been in touch with them, no.
No, just thought you might. I used to run their day center. My husband is the chairman of the organization. I thought you might have been a member, but
yeah, no.
Stella, did you tell your story on Friday? Did you tell your story to somebody? That was the AJR.
Yes, I wrote down my story on the computer, and it's sitting in our flat somewhere for the children, and for our children if they're interested. Yes, it's.
And somebody interviewed you on Friday.
Yes, a lady called Claire, who had similar experiences to myself, apparently, and so I spoke to her about my experiences. Yeah,
and it's recorded, fortunately.
Yes, yes.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, Cynthia.
Thank you, Stella. That was really lovely. Thank you so much. It was really good to hear your story more in the entirety than I've heard before. But I've got millions of questions, and I don't know which is the most important. But when your father lost his briefcase on the railway station with all the money in it, where did he get money from? Where did the family get money from when you went through sedation?
My mother took some with her already, and also there was she was in touch with somebody else who took some money out for us, and another person who took money from us from Germany. He absconded with money, so there was fortunately just enough to get us to wherever we had to go. I don't know how. My mother was very clever and very intuitive, and she managed. She managed, and we lived very frugally in Prague. I remember that my brother and I wanted to go and see the first Disney film that came out. I think it was Cinderella, and my mother burst into tears and said, "I'm sorry, but I cannot afford for you to go to cinema because we need the money for food." So she was very careful, but she, fortunately, I don't know how, but enough money to get for the aeroplane journey to get us to England. So that's all I can say. I don't know how she managed, but she managed. Yeah.
And then what about the visas? There were so many Germans struggling to get out of Germany.
Well, somehow or another, to get out of Germany, my mother had a German passport, so that was no problem to get out. But to come here, these people, these relatives in London, somehow managed to get the visitor's visa. I don't know how they managed that as well. It's again amazing. A miracle, a luck.
Just another example of the timings here that were critical. I believe it was October 1938 when you had to put a J in your passport. So that you'd already left in July with just a normal German passport at that time.
Yeah. My father was stateless. He never had a German passport. He had his passport said stateless.
Lawrence?
Yes, that was lucky. Sorry.
Lawrence, did you have a question?
Firstly, thank you so much, Stella. That was wonderful, and thank you, Alex, for the interview. I'm sort of lost for words, but you obviously aren't. And thank you. But the one thing that comes across, and sort of listening to your journey, and your story is your positivity. I don't detect any negativity, and the photos, you always had this incredible smile. You still do. Is it the positivity that's carried you through?
Well, I'm lucky to maybe I inherited this positivity from my mother. You know, it was always, I felt lucky. I felt looked after all my life. I felt as though I had a guardian angel looking after me. You know, this is, and I still do, even at this time.
Thank God you still do. That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Another question from me. When you came to England, you said you were sent to several families. Were any of them Jewish families?
When we came to England, no, we had this great aunt who, and her family who sort of took us under their wing. You know, that, so again, they showed us round. They helped us to find our flat and all that kind. You know, they were very, very helpful. This great aunt and her son and her daughter-in-law and their children became, you know, we were friendly with the children. So we had like another family. So, you know, we were not isolated. And again, you know, my parents, you know, we made our lives, we were friendly with other refugees who we met, you know, so it was, you know, it was very good for everybody.
Marilyn, did you have a question?
Yes, I just, one comment and one question. First of all, what was your maiden name? We've got you as Shinder, but I presume that's your married name. What was your maiden name?
Orbach.
Orbach.
Orbach. Yes,
Okay.
which actually is a small river in Germany. I think it must have been given to my ancestors who were, you know, the Jews were expelled from Germany in the Middle Ages, and they all had these German names. And that's how we probably had this German name.
Right. Okay. I just wondered what it was in case I knew anybody by that name, Orbach. Well, of course I do, and there's lots of them. Are they related to you?
There's a famous young woman, Susie Orbach,
Is she
in London.
a relative of yours?
She's not related. No, I got in touch with her, but there's no, we are not related. No. No.
And just a comment, I think you're amazing woman to have remembered so much and gone through so much. And the picture that touched my heart was your 10th birthday tea, because I had the same thing as 10 years old with all my girlfriends, and my mother made me a cake and we had our best china, and I could see what a beautiful home you came from. And I carried on my life quite happily. And you suffered and your life was ruined after that. How your mother coped with leaving all that beauty behind, I mean, it's just heartbreaking, and it will stay in my mind forever. You look gorgeous. You were a gorgeous 10-year-old and all your friends were lovely. You don't know what happened to any of them, do you?
Only this one girl that I met, Sylvia,
yes,
whom I met in London later, many years later. Yes.
Okay.
No,
if I can just say, I think I'm afraid the chances are that, you know, my mother's family left it to so late. You know, one by one, these doors locked behind them, more or less as they went through them. You know, so I can't believe that the story relating to their acquaintances would have been a good one, because they just will have missed the boat, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But my mother asked me a while ago, you know, to see whether she could track some of her family. And I went to the Yad Vashem website, and I looked up the various names like Laser and Silverstein and Orbach, which were her parents' names. And I couldn't find anything. on them individually. But what struck me as extraordinary was that if you looked at those names on the Yad Vashem website, it was looking through the London phone directory under Smith or Jones. There was just an extraordinary number of people. You know, there were 6 million killed and 9 million living in Europe. There was extraordinary people by these surnames, extraordinary number. And if you look at it, you know, since, it's a very different story.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you. Absolutely heart-wrenching, but wonderful. Thank you.
Stella, did you ever go back to Chemnitz?
No, never. We traveled, my husband and I traveled through Germany on business, but never to East Germany anymore. I had no desire to you know, to go back. There were not good memories there.
Gillian, Ruth's got a question.
Melvin, sorry.
Ruth's got a question.
Ruth?
Yes, I wanted to emphasize my really joy to hear this story, because my mother was born also in Chemnitz.
Your mother was, sorry?
Was born in Chemnitz.
Oh, really?
And she left Chemnitz in 1938 to Israel. And I'm amazed about your really amazing attitude for life after all you have done in your life. And I will be very happy to meet you one day and bring you some photos from Chemnitz, if you would like to.
I would love that. What was your surname?
My mother's name was Mintz.
Sorry, Mintz.
Mintz. M-I-N-Z, or they wrote it with C.
Yeah, that
Mintz.
doesn't ring a bell. No.
They lived in Leonardstrasse, number 30. And I went with my mother one day back. She didn't want to, but I encouraged her to come back to see her house. And we visited also her school in Chemnitz.
Oh,
and
really?
I have some photos if you would like to see them.
Oh, that would be lovely. That
And
would
I
be.
wish you a happy Mother's Day.
Yeah. Thank you. The same to you. Thank you.
Melvin?
Thank you, Stella. Hi, lovely to see you. Ruth's thing is a segue into what my question, which I'm interested to know from both during and after the war, conversations between your parents and within your family, how much you talked about the old days in Germany and your general feelings and thoughts at those times.
Melvin, somehow I don't recall how much we talked about the old days, because there was so much happening with us, with the family here and the children and grandchildren and so on, that I don't recall the sort of conversations with my parents. That we were living in the present rather than the past. Yes,
I believe that's very common. That's very common. But yeah, okay, interesting.
Lovely to see you, Melvin.
Yeah.
Stella, did you get any help from something like the Jewish Board of Deputies, from the Jewish organizations in London?
No, not in London, but in Cambridge. The refugee they organized for me to live in the hostel, and they organized my schooling and so on. So they were very, very helpful. They were the refugee, I don't know exactly how they were called, but they were a refugee organization in Cambridge. And they were very, very kind and helpful at all times, yes. Yeah, but after that, I didn't need them anymore. You know, it was only during my, you know, the Cambridge stay that they were, that I had help from them, yeah.
We can take one last question. We're coming to the end now.
It's not really a question, it's just to say how full of admiration I am for the way you speak. And you must be about the same age as our beloved Queen. And when I think of her privileged childhood and all the opportunities and advantages that she's had, I think you've come out better. I think that your family and your outlook have given you more satisfaction than her. I'm afraid to say for her, but I'm happy to say it for you. You're an inspiration. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely.
Stella, thank you very much. Alex, thank you very much. It was definitely a plus for Mother's Day. Thank you.